Henry, your professor here. I just want to give you a quick once-over of some of the features here in this International Marketing Task Exhibit 1.3. You know, you've done marketing before. You're going to find a lot of this applies directly to what you've already done. There's nothing too mysterious here, but let me go through it anyway. So for example, we've got the controllable. These are the ones that you're familiar with for marketing. We've got your price, product, place, channels of distribution, promotion. Now they also add research. That is your firm's ability to look at and get after the characteristics of the market. Now, and this is all within the firm. Now we go out, and here we are in the domestic environment, and these are the parts that you can control. And again, you've seen these before. Political and legal forces. So for example, what laws are on the books? What agencies regulate your company or that particular product that you're dealing with? What's the competitive structure of the market you're in? Think of the different markets that are out there. If you were to look at a market, say like cellular telephone, you know that there are like basically 4 or 5 big providers. That's it. You have AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile. Those are the big providers, and there are a bunch of much smaller ones. So that's one particular market structure. As opposed to, say, cable television, where you could have all sorts of different channels out there, different mixed providers, very different kind of competitive structures. On the bottom, not viewable here, I want to make sure I got my head in the shot too. We have the economic climate. So for example, right now we're coming out of a recession, which is a lot better, I think most of you will agree, for most products than being in a recession. However, not all products, because remember, some products are cyclical. They rise and fall with the economic climate. Others are counter-cyclical. So for example, a product like new cars would be cyclical. New car sales are up the last month. That tells me we're coming out of a recession. Used car sales, on the other hand, are down a little. That tells me that those are counter-cyclical products. So they rise and they fall with the, economic climate. Now, this is domestic. This is all within the firm's country. Let's go outside of the country, and now we're talking about country by country by country or trade region, if it's structured that way. So, for example, you have the political legal forces. So let's say I was going to go from the United States to Yemen, country I've mentioned before I'm familiar with. Well, there you have very different legal structure. A lot of it's based on Islamic law. They have they have all sorts of trade laws in Islamic law. Prophet Muhammad was a merchant, so they've always had all sorts of trade law. Economic forces. That particular country has huge economic problems. Balance of payment deficits, all sorts of inflation, etc. So for example, when I was there, you could buy a common good, say for 7 reals. Now that same good would go for approximately 400 reals. So much different inflation rate. Cultural forces. In that case, we have several different forces that are at play there. One, we have kind of globalization, and I'm saying globalization rather than westernization. In the past, we would have said westernization, meaning that all the forces are coming in from the west. Well, that's not the case in a place like Yemen. You have a lot of influence from India. A lot of the movies and popular songs, etc., are heavily influenced by India. There's also influence coming from across the Red Sea, places like Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya. You have Arab forces coming in, influencing the culture. And then you have China, to a large extent. People in Yemen also like anime and things like that coming out of Japan. And then, again, the other European forces I mentioned. So those can all be different cultural forces that are out there. And remember, within a particular culture, you can have change too. So for example, I spent the last week looking at Egyptian musicals from 1950, and I was astounded. Why? Because the people in these musicals were dressed in a way that was a lot more Western than the last time I was in Cairo, which is like about 4 years ago, which tells me that there's been kind of a more conservative shift in that society. Why? Some people would say population, economic influences, decades of half war or actual war, etc. Geography and infrastructure. All geographies are not created the same. If you look around the world, you'll see a wide variety of countries, and they pose particular problems. So, for example, imagine getting around a place like Panama, which is split in half by the canal, as opposed to, say, getting around a place like Costa Rica, you know, kind of one unified clump, or Chile, which is this very long, narrow country. I was actually looking at going there this spring to look at huge telescopes. Sounds totally boring, but that's what I wanted to do. And you can see that there could be a real difference. Now, in addition to geography, you have different infrastructure. So you could have a place, two countries that are the same, like Chile, and one has all sorts of aircraft, airlines, canals, roads, etc. Another could have none of that. And you can see they'd be in very different places. Just think of, say, you wanted to import a product like frozen food, frozen chicken. You know, what happens if you don't have electricity? You know, if you have problems with electricity, if the roads are such that a lot of the product will get damaged on the way there, yeah, that's an issue. Structure of distribution. Do you have like a government-owned distribution system? Do you have a whole bunch of small private companies doing it? Are there one or two traders who own it? If there are one or two traders, there's a thing called ethno-domination that can occur. So, for example, you would go to a place like Yemen and you would find that the silver traders were all from one particular tribe or group of people. You'd find the gold traders from another. Some of the arms weapons dealers, they had a big weapons market. Different again, okay? All different. Level of technology. This is what I was alluding to with infrastructure. So, for example, let's say I bring in a high-tech product. Do I have a lot of people who can handle fixing it? When I was in Yemen the first time, and they were just bringing in these things like cassette players, TVs, etc., there were not a lot of people who knew how to fix them. And you would see this when it came time to, like, say, fix a tape deck. They would pull out the crudest tools to try to do that with. Well, what companies, like I mentioned, Hitachi, Toshiba, etc., what they literally wound up doing was getting a store, take a person from that store, train them to do customer support. People learned that this place had good customer support, and guess what? They sell a lot more product. And then, again, I mentioned the overall economic forces before. So there you have it. A little repetition, but not too much. And by the way, that's just for one country. This could very well hold true. You can have differences in 2 or 3 or 4 different ones. So let's say I'm a company like Aldi, okay? The grocer, maybe you're familiar with Aldi. Well, they come out of Germany, and they have stores, say, in the Czech Republic, which is a different economy, even though it's right next door. They have stores in the United States, which is very different. They may have stores in Britain, which are all different economic zones, and they all have their own unique things. So this is just a quick overview, and I gave you that article on Target Canada just to get you